What's up, you guys? Thank you so much for joining. Since practically forever, art has been considered a reflection of the society and the time it is created in. I mean, it makes perfect sense that art serves as a mirror to the culture, values, themes, beliefs, and social issues of a certain era. However, lately I've struggled a little bit with finding the beauty in some of the popular art that's created in the 21st century, which is also ultimately what inspired me to do this video. I've also had multiple discussions about the subject matter with the people around me, so I cannot wait to share it with you guys and dive into it. To start things off, this video is not supposed to criticize any form of art. I'm in no position to pass negative judgment on other people's work, and that's also not what I want to do. Art is extremely subjective, and this video is more about diving into what the art that's created nowadays in the 21st century tells us about our society. Consider this, 99% of the time, there's always an exception to the rule. Artists create and get inspired by their surroundings, by their life, by what they are confronted with, because a creative outlet allows you to reflect on something that you usually struggle to put into words. And I think it's pretty safe to say that this goes for every kind of art. Doesn't matter if it's poetry, music, art, fashion, whatever it is. People get inspired by their life, by their surroundings. Perfect example to start off, going way back, maybe a little too far back, but it clarifies the point: cavemen. Cavemen used to draw on the walls of their caves about hunting, rituals, and survival because that was what they were confronted with most during their lives. I am unsure about whether or not this was already considered art back when they did it. I think it was more like a map and instructions to how to survive and not die. But now it's considered art, and it shows you how people work with whatever life throws at them. Unintentionally, these cave drawings are now considered a perfect reflection of what life was like back then. Fast forward a lot, if we then go through the whole 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and even 20th century, there are a lot of artworks based on conflicts, based on wars, political artworks. People capture historical events, doesn't matter if it's a victory or a portrait of a leader. All of these are perfect reflections of the time back then. And again, I'm very well aware that this is very much generalizing, but it's all leading up to the point that I'm making about today's society and the art that's being created. I love traditional artworks, but then again, each one to their own. If you look at a lot of the art that's created now, it's based on other things. People love to throw dollar signs on there. People love to play with pop cultural elements. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of including pop cultural elements in my own art as well. I mean, it's extremely contemporary and it's a reflection of our time. But pop cultural elements in art gained popularity in the mid-20th century. And the problem that I have with the direction that all of this is going into is that nowadays people just love to throw designer bags, dollar signs, and symbols of financial establishment onto the canvas or onto Photoshop, whatever you create your art with, and then that's it. Now, the thing with pop cultural symbols and celebrity is that a lot of artworks gain attention and popularity only because of their association with certain figures and themes, which might lead to overshadowing the actual depth of the piece. Now, I love it when art has meaning. I'm a huge conceptual artist myself, but what does this kind of art of the 21st century reflect or tell us about our time? It makes us look extremely shallow. Once we move past this era in a couple of decades, which I'm sure we will, people will look back and see, okay, priorities at this time, significant things at this time were money, certain branded items, certain individuals that people worshipped, and there wasn't a lot of emotion involved. I don't know when, but I assume sometime in the 20th century, the idea of something needs to sell took over. It overpowered the idea of I am creating this out of passion. And that goes from visual art even more to the music industry. Now, way back in the day, I assume the majority of songs were about love. Interpersonal relationships, conflicts, struggles, there's always exceptions to the rule, I'm just generalizing. Then if you go to the 20th century, even beginning of the 20th century, my favorite kind of music is from the beginning of the 20th century all the way to 2010. After 2010, I started struggling more and more to actually find songs that I felt intrigued by. Again, super subjective. If you love every song that's coming out this week, I am not judging you. This is very personal to me, and I'm just trying to prove a point. Specifically, music between the 1930s and the 1960s, that's my favorite. As you can see, that's very old, and I rarely come across people who share that opinion. But music back then, to me, just seemed like it had a little more passion. It was really about a feeling. You could sometimes even tell what a song was going to be about before the person that was going to sing even started singing. It was a way different time. Don't understand me wrong, I do love 80s, 90s, early 2000s, 2010s as well. I love late 90s, 2000s hip-hop. People wrote about what they were confronted confronted with. If you look at the first stages of hip hop, it's about so much conflict because that's what the people who wrote it were confronted with. Music back then also seemed to be way more political. Almost each track seemed to have a purpose, a certain message to send. If you look at a lot of music that's coming out right now, all I hear about is money, sex, drugs, fame, flashing a certain watch, name dropping certain designers. I have this car and this many houses. And this is an observation that I've made based on popular music in my generation. Now, I know that there are beautiful and passionate songs coming out probably right this moment. And there's nothing wrong with singing about possessions and financial success, but it's becoming this very dominating pattern that I've noticed, and it's concerning to me. Because of course you can go off to it at the club, but what does it reflect about our society? Again, like with the visual art, it shows that we're shallow. I'm convinced this time will pass, and looking back, people will say even in music, the priorities were money, certain bags that actually have no conceptual worth, and other possessions. Now, I know it's not my responsibility to fix society, I don't want to. But for me, it's extremely interesting to become aware of these things. And all these money and material-oriented artworks or songs also show that people nowadays apparently care more about looking financially established rather than being financially established. That's also perfectly reflected in the fashion world. Fashion is also a form of art. When I found out that Louis Vuitton is dropping a bag that's actually retailing for $1 million, I thought to myself, if you do a little market research, what does that show about the consumer? The brand thinks there are actually people willing to pay $1 million for a bag because of what it represents. The material worth of this bag is probably not even $100,000. Now, I'm convinced that no financially responsible person is actually going to go ahead and buy this, but I guarantee you there's going to be that one person, and they're probably going to either sing about it in a song or it's going to blow up or whatever. You get what I'm saying? It's about what it represents rather than what it actually is, because apparently that's what people value the most during our time. Sticking with the example of fashion, it's also reflected in all the logo prints that have become extremely popular over the past years. Fashion used to be just well-made clothing. Now it's much more about the brand, who created the item. What does it tell people? What does the world see when I put this on? A lot of companies also started prioritizing comfort over sophistication, which is what to me an expensive garment should actually be, because they know what world we live in today. They know people are going to go ahead and buy it just because they made it, not because it's a well-made piece of clothing. Now, as you can probably tell at this point, there's a lot of great things to discuss about this topic. I also like to ask myself when and where this overconsumption escalated and really started pouring into the creative world, because to me there's so many more things to get inspired by. I mean, every normal day moment that I have feels more intriguing to me than a designer bag, but you know, each one to their own. I do think social media plays a big part with this as well, because we are constantly confronted with the desirable, and the idea of perfection is usually to everyone what they don't have. So, you know, it's all about what you have, what you don't have, whatever. You get the point. If you guys made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Definitely let me know your thoughts about this topic in the comments below. I cannot wait to hear what you think. Until next time, take care and see you soon.